Hey, what's up? Usually I like to wait until my mood is perfect before I start a video, but just gotta keep going, man. Anyway, I had an idea today. I, I was thinking about Godzilla for some reason. I was watching some video and they mentioned Godzilla, and it made me think about something like all these things in the media. And just to preface this, Bad City speaks about this. This is where I get the idea from, but I'm gonna kind of expand upon this. It's like our collective conscious memory, external memory bank, is held in the outside representation of the physical world. I think that rings so true to me. It really does. It makes so much sense. And so, why do I bring up Godzilla? Well, it's not specifically about Godzilla, but I'll let you know here in just a second. I need to kind of set this up. So, essentially, we live in a copy of 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 a simulation of a world that once was, that has gone through many, many, many iterations. And we have been sucked down this endless looping fractal rabbit hole of endless recreating of the same scenarios time and time again. And though the faces change, the scenery changes, the timing can change, the actual essence of the events does not. The core structure of reality does not change. However, it becomes less and less meaningful as you go down, which is why we have the life that we have now. Dull, monotonous, not extraordinary in any way, except through the media. The media portrays extraordinary events, does it not? Something to extravenously feed that outside memory into you in a desperate attempt to keep you attached to the world so that you would be sucked into the next even more decayed iteration of it. Because if we were all to leave, those who were left would have no energy source. They would have nothing to keep the lights on, so to speak, in this place, and they would be sucked down to a bottomless pit, only controlling each other. So, it's essential to let go of the material world at the end of the day. So, how does this tie into Godzilla? Well, Godzilla is just representative of media as a whole: movies, video games, images, videos, whatever you want to call it, all media. I believe media in its essence, digital media especially, was developed as a way to bring back in elements of the simulation that were lost upon previous iterations when you know, the copies became too distorted to hold, the significant meaning, the actual events. And so I believe in previous iterations and in the original simulation, life very well could have been like this. You could have lived for many, many, many years, and this right here could have been going on, giant lizard fighting a giant gorilla. The story of Godzilla, like the lore of Godzilla, is that it was a little lizard on an island that they did a nuclear test on, and the nuclear radiation caused it to transform into this, gigantic creature. And I find that interesting because nowadays, as you know, You know, there's this huge nuclear reactor in Japan that was flooded by a tsunami, and it just keeps leaking radioactive material to the ocean for however long now. And you know how I feel about that? Events on the screen, it's just nothing. If you were to go out there, I'm sure you could see something, but you're not out there. And if you are, please comment down below. I'm very curious to know what's going on out there, please. But most of us aren't out there. And in fact, I believe even if you do live in Japan, you really wouldn't be able to even get close to the site, you know? But that's besides the point. The point is that all of this brainwashing, mind control, mass media is simply trying to recreate the previous, simulacrum, trying to suck you back in, but it fails if you resist it. It fails because it's not real. You'll never see a giant gorilla fighting a giant lizard outside of your door and go, holy moly, what is that? It'll never happen. Similar to the fact that many of the things on the news will never happen in front of you. Now the weather, if they say it's really hot, it could be really hot. I believe most people can hold that belief within themselves subconsciously because that is something that they think is possible. Therefore, it's easy to reflect it in the outside environment. And so that is why they have inundated the people with dystopian, mass murder, apocalyptic, death, death wish scenarios of pure misery and torture. Because of the wicked and contemptuous nature of those who rule this world, they would have us in that situation. But alas, I don't think it's going to go down like that. It's just an illusion. It's just a fantasy. And while that ending may have come to pass in previous iterations of the simulation, and that is how things played out, I do not think it will be so dramatic this time. I do not think it will be. What will be dramatic is the disconnection from the material world and the return of Jesus Christ's Spirit into the hearts of men. The rapture. The rapture is happening right now. I am firmly believe that. As those with real souls pass away and go into the kingdom of God, so it is that the rapture comes. If you think of rapture, a lot of people are likely to come up with an image of people being sucked out of their clothing in some ridiculous, cartoonish, movie-like event. It's like distraction at the moment of understanding. You're thinking about the rapture. You want to know about the rapture. You want to know about how Christ's Spirit comes into the hearts of men. And you're thinking about God. And you're thinking about Christianity. And so what do they put in your face? They put there what they want you to know and what they want you to form in your subconscious mind in there. Like this disastrous, strange event. From my own personal experience, strange things can happen to you in your own little bubble, but not like this that you see on the screen, It will be things personal to you. In a more degraded environment that is smaller and smaller in many ways, both literally, I believe, and figuratively, your spiritual presence and your spiritual weight carries that much more power. It's like being shoved into a smaller and smaller box with a group of individuals. And any action you take is much more effective on the small environment that you exist in than it would be in a bigger environment up the chain. So therefore, you can have a more impactful, extraneous, meaningful experience through the use of your awareness and pushing your weight around in the world, either in a bad or a good way, than you could have before. Yes, this sucks. I mean, it sucks for me. I can't speak for everyone, or even most people, but I feel like a lot of people could take the sentiment that this life is not that fun. It can be quite devastatingly painful and otherwise boring and monotonous, as I mentioned before. However, if you find God and you let go of all this kind of stuff, you'll be able to come to some real startling revelations that will be much more exciting than this nonsense. God has made it so that in the days of our lives we should return to Him and repent. And so it is. The builder's futile attempt to distract us from the reality of our situation has failed. And it was always meant to fail, as it was always meant to be. You go up high enough, everything is like a set of dominoes clicking against one each other and knocking the next domino over, and the next domino after that, all in a straight line. But within your own domino, it seems as if the whole world is falling. But your whole world is falling on for the next domino to fall over, and so on and so forth. And only for those dominoes to form the shape and the fractalization of an entire reality. And for that entire reality to fall down, and then the one above that, and the one above that, and the one above that. And God is still above all those things. So fear not. Fear not for yourself. Fear not for others. For all these things must come to pass before the end. And the end is not death. Death was the beginning in our lives. The end is life. The end is the end of suffering. It is not to be a zombie apocalypse, death march into nothingness. It is to be embraced by the Lord. To be embraced by the pure divine separation, being replaced by the connection between man being restored. There has been not one day in your life that has not had God's hand within it. Remember so. Think of how pitiful all these things are that attempt to keep you ground to this place. It is a desperate, desperate time for those in control. But you know what? I hope they find God. I hope that the things that I've interpreted from the Bible, I hope that God is more merciful and my interpretations may be more negative than God intended, and that He can save these people. I do not wish for hatred and death upon any of these beings. I hope they can come with us and be saved and return to who they were, if it is possible. Understand one more thing before I end the video. Out in the world, out in the outside world that you see around you in your direct perspective, your family and friends, things directly in front of you, your life never has to be a painful experience. You can change your perspective, and that is the only thing that will change the world around you. Manifestation is not what has been taught. Things like The Secret, other various pieces of media. Manifestation is simply a symptom of the changing of your inner subconscious mind to that which is your actual desire. And that desire and that change has nothing to do with the material world whatsoever. What you see in the material world is simply the symptom. So do not attempt to turn your heart black so that you may see goodness outside the world, but push on, push on and resist even when your attempts to turn yourself towards God reflect in the misery in the outside world for yourself. For it must have been so, and that is what is required. If you wish for wisdom, if you wish for understanding, if you pray for these things, understand, God will give them to you. But you must be initiated. Initiated in the way that God initiates you. 40 days in the desert, the starving, the being beaten, the being shipwrecked, being exiled, being shunned by your family and friends. If you truly wish for wisdom and understanding, if you truly wish to be a warrior for God, all these things must come to pass in some form or another. Although I pray that it would not be as bad as it may seem sometimes for you, and that all these things that are given to you, as it says in the Bible, are surmountable for you. God will give you nothing that you cannot conquer and become better of. Just do not be surprised when you grow in awareness and the tests grow more complicated. And the tests come from all directions. And the hatred comes from all directions. Continue to love yourself and love your neighbor and love your enemy as yourself. And you can overcome all these things. And God will grant you what you seek. God bless you. Have a good evening.